Call to order. Item B1 is electronic participation by a school board member. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
I got Mr. DePaul and Dr. Day. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Gilio.
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes.
Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul.
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Dr. Tinsley, you're good to come. We had some network issues.
And everyone?
All right, sir. Thank you. We had some network issues, so he may be,
I heard him, but if
yes,
you can't
it
see,
may be through audio only.
that's all right.
And Dr. Day, Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Oh, yes. Please rise for the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Day. Next one is agenda approval. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second it, but I want to move that we amend the agenda. I would like to, I move that we move items J1, L1, M1, M2, and M3 into the consent agenda. J1 is
The finance report,
the finance report. L1
budget discussion.
is the budget discussion. I don't know that there's much new to discuss. M1, let me find it here,
It's
is
125.
appointment of a new deputy clerk. M2 is approval of a donation of an advanced laser engraving machine. And M3 is acceptance of a gift to Perrymont Elementary from Home Depot. So my motion is that we move all of those items into the consent agenda.
It says-
Second.
Yeah.
Mr. Connor seconded. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, would you please call roll for the,
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Gilio,
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes?
Dr. Gupta,
yes.
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul.
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie.
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
So now we are back to the original motion of approving the agenda, amended agenda. Is there a motion to approve the amended, or is the motion is already on the floor?
Yeah, it's been amended.
Would you please call the roll on the
Mr.
amended?
Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Gilio,
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes?
Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul,
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie.
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley. Motion carries.
Thank you. I don't have any comments. Student representative, Dr. Copeland.
Ms. White, kick us off tonight.
Hello. I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to be here last month, but I'm glad that you guys got to see Claire present because she's thinking about it, doing it next year. So that should be fun. And so some updates on sports teams and upcoming events. Varsity boys basketball is having a really strong season with a 13-3 record. Can we? Yeah, there we go. The girls team is right up there with them with a solid 9-6. Boys JV has. For basketball, boys JV has a 4-5 record, showing a lot of potential though. I've seen them play and they've been doing really well. And the girls JV team is working hard at 3-7. In swimming and diving, we have competitions coming up at the Christianberg Aquatic Center on February 10th and 11th. Indoor track and field will be competing at Heritage on February 8th, showcasing their speed and skill. And additionally, the wrestling team will be facing off at Orange County High School on February 8th as well. So proud of our athletes and all their hard work this season, and I just look forward to seeing everything else to come. And I would like to take a moment to recognize outstanding achievements on the football team. Congratulations to Caleb Brem for receiving the EC Glass Boosters Excellence Award for football. It's given to athletes who demonstrate scholarship, leadership, and integrity-like qualities that Caleb has consistently shown both on and off the field. He's got some great sportsmanship, and it makes him a great role model for his teammates in the school community. Next, another exciting achievement for the football team, Caden Patrick, who's actually Caleb's cousin. So he received the prestigious Rucker Cup, which is an award presented annually to a member of the EC Glass football team who excels in not only football, but scholarship and citizenship. And Caden's dedication on the field, commitment in the classroom, and leadership it really set him apart, and we're really proud of him for representing our school, being excellent in all areas. And then more sports, I promise I'll be over soon, but Heritage and Glass. It's one of our biggest rivalries and most exciting matchups of the season. The teams have a long history of competitive games, but I feel like whenever they play, it's a lot more than just a sport. It's about representing your school and showing your school spirit. So I know that it was rescheduled, but it's rescheduled for tomorrow night at Heritage High School. Girls game starts at 5:30, and I have to stress that the girls basketball games this year have been so entertaining to watch. I've so enjoyed it. So please, if you feel like going to the girls game as well, you absolutely should. And then boys game at 7. So they need our support. So we should all be there. And then swim team had their senior night on January 24th, honoring 6 great seniors: Holden Houck, Parker Citizen, Emery Hill, Charlie Webb, Sarah Edwards, and Emily Asbury. And Emery Hill is actually committed to swim at JMU. And it was filled with a lot of appreciation to their dedication, hard work, and their contributions for the past few years on the swim team. They've been leading by example and leaving a lasting impact on the program. We have a couple broken records for some of the seniors that are graduating, and can't wait to see what's next for them. So congratulations to all the seniors. In AP African, oh no, it may not have loaded, but I added a slide for AP African American Studies, but if it didn't, that's fine, I'll just talk about it. On January 22nd, Mr. Reed, the teacher of AP African American Studies, was able to take 3 of my classmates, Casper, Gabriella, and Mara, to Richmond to speak with lawmakers for AP Advocacy Day. And this allowed students to kind of share their stories and experiences directly to elected officials about the impact that AP classes have made on their lives. Super cool opportunity, and I'm really glad that they got to be a part of it. And LCS teacher shout out, Miss Sarche, an English teacher at Glass, she received an LCS teacher shout out for being just a really dedicated and passionate teacher at EC Glass. And one of her students even said, "She cares about how her students feel and their success. She's so sweet and deserves the world. Her teaching is never one way. There's always something new every day, and it's always educational." And her ability to connect with students, create engaging learning experiences, and like having a supportive classroom environment is what makes her like such a special part of our school. And she was actually one of the chaperones on the summer trip to Germany, Switzerland, and Austria that I was on this year. And she's just so much fun to be around, such an intelligent, like sweet woman. So nobody more deserving. So congratulations to Miss Sarche. And then on January 16th, the LCS CTE precision machining students from Glass and Heritage both got the opportunity to attend a field trip to process printing. And this kind of let them see firsthand how the skills that they're learning in the classroom are applied in the real world. So thank you to Progress Printing for letting them attend and learn and do some hands-on stuff. And that is all I have for February. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Ms. White. Ms. Hester, updates for Heritage.
Well, I hope everybody's having an amazing month. So our counselors have started to meet with rising 10th and 12th or through 12th to work on their schedules for their future. Beacon of Hope has also had a FAFSA night at Heritage last week, which gave seniors and their families an opportunity to get help completing their FAFSA and financial aid. So that was a great opportunity. Our student leaders got an opportunity to work with the 8th graders with Moving Up Day. So the student leaders got the opportunity to give tours for the rising 9th graders and also the opportunity to be on a panel that helped answer questions and give insight on what to expect at Heritage. I got the pleasure of doing it, and it was an amazing opportunity. So on to winter sports. Yes. Our boys basketball team is currently on an 8-game winning streak, and hopefully they keep that up. But let's see with our competitors, Glass and Heritage, tomorrow. Our boys' record is varsity 10-6 and JV 1-10. Our girls' basketball varsity is 4-11 and JV is 2-14. Swimming, track, and field, and wrestling are also doing great in their seasons as well. I have 2 spotlights. So our girls' wrestling team has done a great job this year. This is one of the biggest girl groups we have seen in over years. So congratulations to them and continue their hard work. And then Brianna Toons, she's an outstanding junior who has been recognized as the Athlete of the Week on January the 25th. She continues to be a standout who has helped continue the Heritage Girls Track Dynasty. Keep up the amazing work, Brianna. So our Pioneer Theater, debuts their winter show, The Addams Family, which dates are February the 21st and March the 1st, so come out and support them. Last week, we had an amazing Winter Spirit Week, which had a great turnout. We also had a pep rally where students got a chance to watch a senior versus staff basketball game. It was a great lead up to the LCA game, which we happened to also win, so that was a great week. We have a Pioneer Senior Spotlight. Cadet Captain Paisley Hobson was given the Optimist Club JROTC Award by Sergeant Major Eldridge, so congratulations to her. We also want to thank our Heritage Counseling Departments and all school counselors worldwide during this special week. Thank you guys for all you do and for each and every student you put your hands on. So thank you, and have a great day in #1 Big Orange Country.
Thank you, Ms. Hester. Now, on that last slide, did you include that because of your favorite counselor at the school?
Maybe.
Well, good luck to both teams tomorrow night in the basketball game.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a community conversation session at EC Glass at 7 o'clock today for the new superintendent search. Thank you. Next one is the consent agenda. Is a motion to approve the consent agenda, the modified consent agenda.
Public comments. Yeah, public
Oh,
comments.
sorry.
Public comments, I think.
What am I doing? Public comments, Dr. Day.
Yes, okay. I'll read the usual statement. Persons appearing before the school board will not be allowed to campaign for public office or promote private business ventures and should not use profanity or vulgar language or gestures, make comments about a public official or an employee that are not related to their official duties, engage in behavior that disrupts the meeting or intimidates others, or address the school board on issues that do not concern the services, policies, and/or responsibilities of the school board. Individual speakers shall limit their comments to 3 minutes. A speaker representing a group shall limit their comments to 5 minutes. The representatives shall identify the group at the beginning of their presentation. A group may have no more than one spokesperson. The total allotted time for public comments at board meetings is 30 minutes. Public comments are reserved for the public to provide input. The board does not respond to comments, answer questions, or otherwise engage in discussion at this time. We do not have any students signed up. The next in the list of the sequence in which we go through public comments are staff members. We do have one staff member, Mr. Carl Lewis.
Hi, good evening to all of you. And as always, thank you for your service and your commitment to the students and staff of Lynchburg City Schools. My name is Carl Luce. I'm president of the Lynchburg Education Association. And there are two things that I wanted to talk with you tonight briefly about. The search for our next superintendent and our LCS budget. Let me express our thanks to the search committee and to this board for allowing the LEA to meet privately with the search firm yesterday. It was a great opportunity to share the specific needs and concerns the staff have as we all work together to find the best leader to help guide our division forward in trying times. After surveying our members, we heard from every level in the district and a wide variety of positions within the district. We had three qualities that really stood out: a leader with experience in a public school division, someone who was strong on discipline, and someone with at least 10 years of experience working directly with students prior to entering administration. We were able to talk with the firm about choosing a leader that will have a strong relationship with employees and be visible in the schools. We talked about a leader who will communicate well, hire well, and knows how to put people in the best positions to succeed. We talked about hiring someone who is supportive of collective bargaining and has a vision that can position LCS in the right place for its inevitable arrival. So again, thank you for that opportunity. Speaking of opportunities, this board and this division have been working hard to come up with a budget that is representative of what is best for LCS moving forward. It's a complex process that involves every department, school, and site in Lynchburg City Schools. It's a budget that's put together by qualified professionals and revisited multiple times. It's a budget that efficiently utilizes taxpayer dollars to provide the best education this region has to offer. And while we know this budget doesn't come close to the goal of getting our employee pay up to the state average, it's a budget that increases staff wages at a time where much of our pay raises are being swallowed up by rising costs. Retaining staff is going to be crucial to setting up our next superintendent for success. It's also a budget that calls for an increase in funding from City Council. As the school board, the Virginia Constitution gives you, and you alone, the power to run the schools. But that same Constitution says that City Council controls the purse strings. So now it becomes your responsibility to fight for the funding that we need. You have a leader in Dr. Copeland that you handpicked for that seat, and he and his staff have provided you with everything you need. Every fact, every facet, every justification, everything you need to approach City Council with reason and logic and explain that this is the number. This is what it has to be. So I stand here today to ask you to advocate for us, your staff, so that we can advocate for our kids. Support this budget every step of the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have one parent, Tyona Wilson.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Tiana Wilson. I am the proud parent of two children that are here behind me who attend Heritage Elementary and Sandusky Middle School. I stand in front of you this evening to address the incident at Sandusky Middle School involving a firearm yesterday. We are fortunate that yesterday's events did not become the tragedies that we have all sadly become accustomed to. Thankfully, Sandusky Middle School was not another Columbine, an Uvalde, a Sandy Hook, a statistic. But let's take a look at some of the numbers. Since the shooting at Columbine in 1999, 338,000 students in the U.S. have experienced gun violence at school. 4.6 million American children live in a home where a gun is kept, loaded, and unloaded. Nearly half of all parents believe their children don't know where a gun is stored. In 4 out of 5 school shootings, at least one other person had prior knowledge. With varying contributing factors, and the aforementioned only representing a minuscule number of those, it is nearly impossible for any district to combat all, if not most of those contributors. But there are solutions. I urge you to implement a plan for Sandusky Middle School and every other school in the Lynchburg City Schools Division to protect our children, teachers, staff, and faculty while they are inside the doors of every school in the city. The plan cannot be simply to rely on reports from other students. And thankfully, a very brave student saw something and he said something yesterday. Again, we cannot rely solely on the bravery of a child. It will be ineffective and inefficient and is really irresponsible as a long game. I urge the school board to appeal to City Council and to city leaders to give you the tools to become proactive. While the response from LPD yesterday was swift and was with force, it is simply not enough. It takes mere seconds for gun violence to disrupt and ruin the lives of our students and their families. While drills, quick police presence, and lockdowns are in place, they're all reactive. I demand you all be proactive. Let's focus our efforts toward preventing the issue instead of simply reacting to it. There are other formidable solutions to the issues of guns and other weapons inside of our schools. While funding is essential and does present obstacles, I believe in the hearts, the passion, and creativity of this board and this community. The devastating reality of school violence demands innovative and effective solutions. On behalf of the students, parents, and teachers of Lynchburg and its schools, I stand here demanding a plan and a solution. I demand that my daughters, your children, your grandchildren, their children, do not become a part of the 338,000. I'm asking for responsibility and accountability. Thank you, Board, for your time and the opportunity to speak this evening.
Thank you. Next is a familiar face to this board, Dr. James Coleman.
My name is James Coleman, a former member of the board, and on behalf of a grateful community, I thank each of you for your countless hours of service to the LCS community. My coming today is not to make a big deal out of nothing, nor a mountain out of a molehill, but to address a recent act of replacing the picture of LCS's 13th superintendent with the picture of a disabled individual, making mockery of the individual and labeling that picture as our current interim superintendent. In my personal opinion, this recent act is both egregious and evil. This opinion is also shared by many others in our community. Here is a quintessential question. Who was this depiction aimed at? Our former superintendent or our current interim superintendent? To whomever this recent act is aimed, it is not a locker room prank. This is not about race or gender. This is about, in the words of Aretha Franklin, RESPECT, respect for our leaders, our interim, and former superintendents. It is about accountability and standard. To this distinguished board, how can we look to our students, employees, and community and say to them we expect high standards and we do not hold someone accountable for this action? LCS, this is not our best. This is a poor example of who we are as the educational hub of Lynchburg. We expect our staff to report when we see vandalism, and this is a pseudo-example of vandalism or bullying. The LCS community deserves to know how this happened and why it happened, and ensure the public that it will not happen again. We should not accept this type of public display. An adult probably did this due to limited access to this chamber. However, whoever is the culprit, this individual should have no place of authority in this hallowed chamber, nor our school district without serious reprimand. Adults show an example to the students. A childish prank like this matter, of which I speak, sends a message to our students that bullying is acceptable. So as I leave you, we are addressing behavior. If a kid did this, what would happen? We must always do what is right because it is right for all of the right reasons. I urge Virginia's best school board to address this matter in the right way.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Mr. Carl Hutcherson.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, staff, and citizens. I had the opportunity the last week to journey out of town to get some rest, I thought. But I received word about the same issue that Dr. Coleman has just spoken to. I was with my 15-year-old grandson in Raleigh. I had an opportunity to chat with him and asked him what his thoughts might be if something like that happened at his school in Chapel Hill. And he said to me very simply, Papa, we don't allow adults to do things that children can't do either. Dr. Coleman has indicated that children would be summarily punished if, in fact, things like this were done. It denigrates our interim superintendent, and it denigrates our former superintendent. But it's not all on your shoulders. The purse strings are held by those who are elected to public office. And so our mayor, Larry Taylor, our vice mayor, Kurt Deemer, and all of the members of council need to let whoever is responsible know that if it was done by someone inside these chambers, they should be removed from the board. If it is done by some staff person, they should be summarily dismissed from the employ. I've heard since I returned that this was a practical joke. I heard it early this morning. Well, it might have been a joke, but it wasn't practical because it hurts our children. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment period.
Thank you, Dr. Day. Next one is consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve
Motion.
the amended consent?
Second.
agenda? Mr. Connor, Mrs. Lowry, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Jalil,
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes?
Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
Mrs. Preston,
Yes.
Mr. DePaul,
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie.
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next one is unfinished business. Dr. Tinsley, Ad hoc Search, Superintendent Search Committee.
Yeah, the only thing I would add there is that we are in the midst of our stakeholder meetings. We had meetings all day yesterday, all day today, and all day tomorrow. At the end of each day is a community session, so as I did on the media last night, I'll urge anyone who has not been to a stakeholder meeting yet to attend one of the stakeholder meetings tomorrow. And if you don't have a particular stakeholder meeting that you've been invited to, the community one at the end of the day is available for everyone. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Tinsley. Next one is new business, alternative education, Dr. Bo.
I'd like to invite Dr. Brown and his team to the podium to make the presentation.
Good afternoon, members of the board.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Room. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Okay. Let's go ahead and jump right into things, but I just want to say I really appreciate the time and opportunity to present before you all our update on our alternative education program, LCS Restore. We've been trailblazing and doing a lot of great work, and just really excited to hear that from you all, to present that to you all. I also want to just put a disclaimer that, we have worked very hard on this system, and it's not perfect. There are some things that are successes and should be celebrated. There are some areas that we have opportunity to grow, and we want to make sure that we're transparent. We lead with integrity and transparency, and we've spent a lot of time putting together these facts, figures, and data, and just hope that you are able to glean some deeper understanding about the system and the intentionality behind it and what we're trying to do to help kids, because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, is helping not just the students in alternative education, but all of our students across Lynchburg City Schools thrive and have a better future. Just want to thank my team for being with me. I do have several members that are leaders in our programs. Dr. Chris Glover, who's principal over Fort Hill. We have Ms. Kim Scott and Ms. Tina Cooley, who are over our elementary restorative and alternative programs. And Mr. Yarborough is here as well, has helped a lot with the data analysis, and may be able to speak to some things moving forward. So I just want to give a quick overview and story, if I will, before we dive into some things about being upstream. This is a metaphor and an imagery that really stuck with me. And there's a story that, there were two friends having lunch on the riverside, and they just heard the cries of a child in the river. And they looked over, and the kid was in the river drowning. And so without thinking, they run to the river, they get the kid out, and then they pull the kid to the side, and he's okay. And then they hear another scream. They see a little girl in the river, and they rush to do the same thing, get the girl out. And then they see another child, and then another child, and then another child, and they're just rushing, and they can't keep up. There's so many kids coming down the river, they're trying to pull out of the river. And then one friend just stops saving the kids in the river. And then one friend yells, it's like, where are you going? There's more kids to save. And that person said, I'm going upstream to stop the guy from throwing all the kids in the river. And so that's exactly what we're trying to do with LCS Restore. We're not trying to address issues as they come to us and just save the kids that are in the river and drowning. We're trying to get upstream, address problems at its root, be proactive and be innovative. Innovative being new and effective. I think sometimes we say things are innovative and they're just new, or there's something that's been regurgitated from some other source, but when we say innovation, we mean that it's better and it's new. So with that being said, I do want to invite Dr. Glover to the podium just to speak very briefly about our nuanced pieces with alternative education. We know that it was will of the board. We did a presentation last year about some of the effectiveness and numbers about how it's decreasing suspensions and improving behavior. But we know that this time the board wanted to hear a lot about the academic outcomes. Is it improving students' academic success and giving them opportunities in that manner? It is very challenging task to do because a lot of these students are in different locations and different placements. And just want Dr. Glover to add context, not as an excuse, but as context for why we analyzed the data the way that we did and track things the way that we track them in our alternative systems. So Dr. Glover, at this time, come up to the podium.
Good evening. Yes, I just want to provide some context to some of this presentation that Dr. Brown is going to be giving. And the goal, as he mentioned, is, I think, first to make a distinction between explanations and excuses. I think there's a key distinction in there that's important because Alt-Ed should be held accountable just like any other school system, or excuse me, just like any other traditional school-based school. But there are some contextual factors that I think are important to highlight as explanations. For one, why compelling data is challenging in terms of tracking some of our students, but also just so you understand some of the different nuances that go into our job. So I want to give that context with just a couple of student scenarios, and I could give many more. These are actually 2 real student scenarios based on students that I have in my building. And one of the things I want to illustrate that I hope you'll see from these scenarios are that these students are in and out of Fort Hill pretty regularly. A lot of our students are very transient, meaning they're in their base school, then they may be enrolled at Fort Hill. They might go to the detention home and then go to Turning Point Academy, which is part of the detention home. And so they're unenrolled from LCS and enrolled in TPA. They come back out because usually that's for a short period of time. They always have to come back to Fort Hill if they're unenrolled from Turning Point. They start off back at Fort Hill. Sometimes they then have to be placed on remote, either for behavioral reasons or for lack of space in our building. And then sometimes they get placed out because they are referred to the board for disciplinary reasons and they're placed with home-based. So just to give you an idea, I have student A, and like I said, both of these are actually student scenarios. Student A enters Fort Hill at the end of last year, school year 2023-2024, and she starts off as a remote student because of lack of space in our building. Then at the start of this school year, she begins in person, and about a few weeks to a month into school, she is enrolled in Turning Point Academy for just a few days because of some charges she received outside of school. So she's unenrolled from Fort Hill. She enrolls at Turning Point Academy. She re-enrolls at Fort Hill just a short while later. She does well for most of the semester, but then because the court system is often backed up and because their court cases can come back later, she has another charge that she goes back to court for a couple months later and is then placed in Turning Point Academy for 60 days. Upon being released, she must return to Fort Hill for a period of time before she is eligible to return to her base school, even if her behavior was excellent before going to Turning Point and her board assigned time is expired. So she enrolls back at Fort Hill. She then has to complete her 2 to 4 weeks or so before she can go back to her base school if her behavior and attendance is good. And then she returns back to her base school Q4. So in this one example, we have a student that started off on remote learning, and we have some data too about remote learning that I can get into a little later. She started off on remote learning, which is not good for almost all of our students because they're at home with little support, supervision, or teaching, and they're trying to navigate a program that offers not the kind of help that they need. So her academics are not where they need to be when she comes into the school building. Then she enters Fort Hill, she gets some assistance, she starts improving, then she goes into Turning Point, she's there, she comes out, she goes back into Turning Point, and then she goes to her base school. Student B is another one of our students, And he is assigned to Fort Hill and begins Fort Hill in school year 2023-2024, so this was last year. He spends 1 quarter at Fort Hill, and he's eligible to return to his base school based on his behavior and his review date. So his review time, he was up for review, and based on his behavior and attendance, he was eligible to go back to his base school. So he does re-enter his base school, and shortly after that, he's subsequently charged with a reportable offense. And a reportable offense are certain categories. That means that he not only has to be sent back to Fort Hill, he can't be in any school building. So he is sent back to Fort Hill, but he cannot be in the building because of his charges in any school building. So once again, he is placed on remote learning until his court case is resolved or dismissed. And so he's on remote for several months and does little work for months until his court case is resolved. Once it is resolved, he's then allowed back in the school building. He comes back to Fort Hill, of course. And he sporadically attends. And at this point, this student is now 17 with not very many credits. So he starts showing interest in the GED program and tries to start preparation for the GED program. He is actually eligible, based on behavior and attendance, to return to his base school again, but he decides he doesn't want to because his family has since moved and now they're zoned for another school in the district. So he chooses to remain at Fort Hill to try to work on getting into the GED program. So both of those scenarios, I can give you several more if it would be helpful. The goal is not to offer excuses once again, it's to offer, when we're trying to collect data and show an accurate representation of academic improvement and even behavioral improvement sometimes, our students are all over the place, moving back and forth between systems. And so that's partly what creates the challenge to collect accurate data.
Thank you, Dr. Glover. And so with that, we're going to dive into our presentation. Just wanted to kind of set the stage as a context. And one of the things before we dive into the numbers and some of the other things, just wanted to reiterate the numbers that we chose and the cohorts of students we did is because of what Dr. Glover just said. Sometimes it is just students bouncing from one program to one school to another situation. And we wanted to make sure that we gave you an accurate representation of what's going on with students that are being impacted. We don't believe that SOL scores are the measure in this case because some of these students are touched by 4 or 5 different teachers, 3 or 4 different teachers and programs. And so you can't say that because they were in this alternative program, their SOL score was this. But we have analyzed the data in a way which we feel accurately represents the academic progress and outcomes from these places. So one of the things that we wanted to do is when I first was brought on here in Lynchburg City Schools was that I was tasked to revamp our alternative education program. As many of you may know that we're on the board for a while. Fort Hill was a place where students were just given packets. It was very little instruction. It was a 3-hour day, and 2 cohorts of kids came in and kind of split time there. And so there was not a lot of support in Ms. Cooley's program. She was doing a great job and working really hard, just didn't have a lot of resources and outside supports and mental health opportunities. And so we worked really hard to create a vision that we all believe in and working towards. So our vision was to become a national model for how to provide world-class behavioral mental health support in an educational setting. And in a lot of ways, we're doing just that and have done that. And I'm excited to share that on my last slide, and I'll come back full circle to this at the end. But our focus is really just to provide a sustainable and effective system, not just a program, not just an intervention, but an actual system that works together, is cohesive, and moving towards helping our students improve, not just with behavior, but academics as well. And these aren't things that we just created. This is what we have had at our foundation of our work. And if you look back over many of my presentations from the past, these are the things that I've been saying for the last 3 years and the work that we've been moving towards. If we can go to the next slide. We're affirmed that this work is the right work. There are 2 bills moving through our legislature right now with a House bill and a Senate bill that would provide $2 million in grant funding for restorative practices. That would be a competitive grant that would be released to 1 school system in each of the 8 regions across Virginia. So we're affirmed that this has the attention of our legislators and they're putting dollars towards it, and hopefully that passes. And if it does, we'll definitely make sure that we apply for that competitive grant. Some of the research and all of the work is done in research. We're not just doing things because we think that they're a good idea. We study, we're very intentional with our programming. We look at best practices and we try to implement evidence-based practices that have an impact and positive outcomes for our students. And so research shows, and it's a growing body of research, especially around restorative practices, that it can increase in, academic performance, it can decrease negative behaviors in students, it can increase school climate. We know that academic achievement is a key component of reducing suspensions, and so we believe that all of our systems do those things. Next slide. Just a general overview. Many of you know our programs, but may not have seen it kind of laid out this way. We look at it in tiers, and tier 3 being one of our more severe and intense interventions. Tier 1 is all of our base schools, and then we have tier 2 programs for our restorative suspension center. Any student that receives a 10-day suspension or less is going to our suspension center, unless it's for a violent crime or a fight or something like that, violent offense. Our restorative academies are longer-term programs, and for our elementary program, can stay anywhere between a quarter to a semester. Same thing for our restorative academy for secondary, which is 9th and 6th grade, K and 1st grade for elementary. And then our more intense programs are our TAP. You'll hear me refer to TAP. That's our Transition Alternative Program, which Ms. Cooley leads, and then Fort Hill Community School. Next slide. Just I'm not going to go into detail on this. This will take like an hour to go through, but this is just our logic model, which is just a nerdy way of saying this is how we make sense of everything that we do and some of the interventions. And this was part of the $8.4 million grant that we got and was selected for. That was a national grant. And just a very intentional way that we're trying to look for our outcomes, short-term, mid-term, and long-term outcomes. I wanted to provide you also with an overview of what our enrollment looks like to date. These numbers were pulled last week, and so some of them have increased or fluctuated up or down. But as of last week, these were some of our numbers, and you can see the capacity in our middle column and students that have been served this year. Because while we have students enrolled to date, we also have students that come and go, and so we want to give a good overview of what all of our programs look like. And then, again, we're going to be transparent. So some of our programs aren't full, as you see, and that's what it looks like right now as a snapshot. But sometimes in the year, these programs are full. There's also a challenge because sometimes different grade levels in these programs are full. So while we may not have any space, we may have space at one of our programs overall, we might not have any room 6th grade or 9th grade, depending on how many students are getting in trouble at that time. Next slide. Dr. Glover.
One other comment, sorry, real quick about that too. In terms of enrollment, one of the things principals have to do to place students at Fort Hill, so they can go through the board, of course, which several of you have been on those meetings, but then they can also do principals placements. In principals placements, they have to go through a checklist of different items. They have to have this done, this done, this done to show that they're doing their due diligence before they send a student to alternative education. Many of those checklists start to be completed second semester. So that is when our enrollment starts to balloon. So last year, I think many of you have heard me say this, first semester last year, we were pretty full, but second semester is when we started having students really start coming over regularly. So our building at capacity can hold 90. That's if scheduling works out exactly as it should, which is not usually the case. And last year, at our highest time, at the end of the year, we had 140 students. So we had 50 or more that had to be placed on remote.
Dr. Glover. So, short story. At this time during the year, just right now, we have our alternative system has served over 500 students to date so far this year. I just want to talk a little bit about our suspension center because that's this program that serves the most students, led by Mr. Martin, Jared Martin. And when we started this program, we wanted to see were suspensions working, traditional suspensions, just kicking kids out of school, sending them home, not intervening in any kind of way. And we found that almost 60% of the time, students were returning and getting another suspension. And so more often than not, students, if they got suspended, they would be resuspended again. And we didn't feel like that was a number that we were comfortable with. Last year, we reduced that, and then this year, we reduced it even more. So now we're down to 18.3% of the time students are being resuspended, and we feel like that's a really successful number. Next slide, please. Just wanted to show you kind of a breakdown of what that looked like. Blue bars are from last year and the yellow are this year. And so we attribute some of that decrease into our middle school. Last year, our middle schoolers were really giving us a hard time around this time of the year and just couldn't figure out why they were being resuspended. Still less, but almost 50% of the time. And I got to give it to Mr. Morgan, who's our teacher over there. It's a really burly guy, pretty scary looking, big beard. So I think he's cracked and has the magic code to making sure those kids don't want to come back over again. But he does a great job of making sure they learn their lesson. And then we also have gotten it down. It was 32% of the time they were being resuspended last year, and that's down even further this year to 8%. Our next slide shows what I'm most proud of, which is if you look on the both column for this year, only 8.6% of the time students are returning for the same offense. So while they may be returning a little bit more at 18%, they're not returning for the same thing. More often than not, those kids are learning their lessons and not coming back for the same offense. I want to talk about transition and kind of shifting gears from our suspension center to our academies. And so our goal for the academies, it hasn't always been just to get students fixed and back to a base school. I think that's an oversimplification of a really complex issue with some of these students and their stories. Some of them have trauma, some of them have poverty that they've experienced and impacts them. They have had years of academic trials and challenges that haven't been able to overcome. Some of them are behind in their academic, and I think it'd be naive for us to think that in a quarter or a semester we're able to fix all those issues and get them back to the base school. But what we do envision that is our restorative academies are more of an intersection of a student's academic career. In elementary, we really want to get them on track so that they're not retained and they can continue on with their peers and they can learn and not be a distraction. And in our secondary programs, we really want to focus on making sure that they have the credits that they need to graduate on time, be successful, but also the behavioral skills so they can get back to their base school and stay at their base school. So one of the measures of success that we look at are our students transitioning out, and are they transitioning to the right places, and are they staying in those places? And so as you can see, we've had just this semester, and this is semester data and quarter data, from our elementary program, we've had 3 students that have transitioned back to their base school. It doesn't seem like a lot, but that's a lot. And that's a big deal with some of the students and the behaviors that they were exhibiting. I know Ms. Scott would attest to that. 100% of the students that have transitioned back to have gone to the base school, but we did find that 3 of those students need a longer stay and more intervention, so we transitioned them on into TAP with Ms. Cooley and her program. In secondary RA, we found that first quarter, 4 out of the 8 students that were eligible to return and 16 out of the 18 students that were eligible to return to their base school did so, and 83% have stayed at their base school and are still there right now. We'll pull this data again at the end of the year and see if they were able to maintain that throughout the entire year, but right now data looks promising. And 17% have transitioned to Fort Hill because that's the environment that we believe they need it, and then families have been on board with that. One of the things that we want to focus on are the academic, and I think this is something that you all have been interested in. And so working with Mr. Yarborough, we felt that it was most meaningful not to just look at all of our students because of the situation that Dr. Glover explained. Some of our students are there for a week, some of them there for extended period of time. They've been everywhere. So what we looked at are that gave us the biggest cohort of students to look at their academic record are 8th grade and 9th grade students. And that's looking at how many credits that they've earned, how many classes that they're passing. And so the measure isn't SOLs, but our measure of what we're looking at for academic improvement are numbers of classes that students are passing and not failing. And so we found that with that measure, and in your supplemental packets on board docs, I've also given you the raw scores and how many credits students have earned. So if you're able to look at that yourself instead of just seeing the number on the screen, each of those numbers are a kid attached to that. But we found that 92.3% of the students at Fort Hill have either maintained or improved the number of classes that they're passing. At Secondary Academy, we've found that 100% of those students have maintained or improved. And we've also found that at our Secondary Academy for RA, that on average, their GPA increases by 1.5 points on a 4-point scale. Next slide, please. So one of the things that was really encouraging for us to see as students enter into Restorative Academy Secondary, that's that 6th and 9th grade program, on average, the student's GPA is a 1.06, which is a D average. And when they leave, it's almost a 2.6 average for the average number of our kids, which is almost a B. A B minus would be a 2.7 GPA. And just so, because I said they're either maintaining or improving, we wanted to show this slide to show that it's not the majority of our students that are maintaining. The majority of our students in these programs are improving. And the blue bar shows that the students, the percentage of students that have improved the number of courses that they're passing versus the number that they're failing. And then the other ones in yellow, if it's dark yellow, that means they're max credits. That means they went into the program passing 4 core classes and they're leaving passing 4 core classes. Or if they maintain, that means they came in with passing 1 class and they're still passing 1 class. And if they decrease, of course, they are failing more classes than when they came in. Next slide. Our academic outcomes for our elementary programs are a little different because some of these programs are starting when the kids are starting in school, so we don't really have anything to compare it with. But what we do know is really important is for them to be able to be on reading level and passing their reading and passing their math and having that really good foundation with that. So that's the measure that we look at for Restorative Academy for elementary. And 100% of those students that are in the program are passing their math and reading. At our TAP, we're looking at 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade classes and seeing are those students passing their core classes. And we found that 73% of those kids are passing all their classes, and 9% of them are passing 3 out of 4 classes. There were 2 students that were not passing any of their classes, but we're working on them. Academic supports, there's a lot of things that we do, and I won't, for interest of time, I'll just kind of skim through this, but I just wanted to show this to let you know that there's a lot of really intentional things that we do academically with these students and with teachers, and not just to provide academic support, but also just engagement and mental health and making sure that they have good citizenship. And so one of the things that we know is really important is parental engagement, and if we have supportive parents and can get them involved and work alongside them, that makes a huge difference. So we go off the model of high care and high expectations, and I've talked a lot about that. You can't have one without the other. We also have PLCs that we work with our teachers of looking at data and trying to make sure that we're moving them along academically. We've done some really neat podcasts that we've tied to literacy and been able to have students connect with community mentors. Mr. Andrews is not here today. Mr. Wilder, Councilmember Wilder have also come and worked with our students in our alternative programs to create these podcasts. It's really almost transforming moments for a lot of these kids to have that voice and connected to something that's really high and rigorous in an academic perspective. We have a lot of partners that we work with, Harvest Impact, Life Push, the Good Gangs program, and a lot of parent nights and celebration. Ms. Scott does a wonderful job bringing her families in, as do all of our other community members. Dr. Glover, Ms. Cooley, Dr. Glover's done some barbershop nights and done some really neat things to celebrate the kids in the program. Just one of the things that we want to highlight, we want to always be grounded in research. And so one of the things that we know is that academic achievement is directly linked to dropout rates. And the high school dropouts are less likely to be employed and have other poor health outcomes, and as well as high school dropouts are more likely to be involved in crime. So we want to make sure that at all costs we're avoiding kids getting dropped out. And this work isn't just temporary. We believe that this work has a generational impact, not just on that one student, but their families and the families that come after them on down the line. And so one of the things that we're most encouraged about is seeing kids graduate. And so Dr. Glover and Fort Hill were able to graduate 6 students with their high school diploma last year that most likely would have been dropouts. And I don't say that likely, that's a real possibility for a lot of those students. That's 6 members of our community don't have the opportunity to have a high school degree, can struggle, find employment, and have some of those more negative outcomes, are more likely and prone to those. We also have, to date, 7 of our students that have completed their GED, and we have 4 in progress. And Miss Quisenberry, Casey Quisenberry, Miss Moody do an awesome job, just 2 ladies running that entire program as coordinators and teachers and take care of all these students. And that's our last safety net to make sure that these students have opportunity. I'm looking at my watch, and I know we're running a little long. I'm going to speed along here, and so we have some time for questions. Dr. Glover already kind of hit on some of the challenges that we experience. And again, I said we wouldn't just show you all the good stuff. We're also going to talk about some of the challenges and concerns that we have. We are concerned that academic-wise, it's hard for us to get accurate data and make sure that we know where kids are and see the impact that we're having academically. And so we know we need to have more data collected, pre and post-assessment data. So when students are enrolling at our alternative sites, we're looking at Edmentum or IXL data to get an accurate feeling of where they are and assess them. And then when they have the post-assessment, when they leave our program, so we have an accurate depiction on where they are with their courses. We also know that attendance is a struggle. For a lot of these students, it's hard, and even though they're experiencing the academic outcomes, on average right now, Fort Hill students are missing on average about 18 days of school. That's chronically absent for the end of the school year, and so are on pace to double that chronic absenteeism number. And it's just hard to get them to come to school for a plethora of reasons. Something that we're looking at as a challenge. Online seems to be really a struggle, and Dr. Glover had pulled some numbers for his kids that are on online. If you look at the 13 students that are on online right now, I think pretty much all of them are failing, all except for one are failing all their classes, all their core classes, and have decreased, especially if they were in person and then go virtual. They do a lot worse in that virtual setting. Behavior, we've seen this across the division. While we're decreasing things, we're seeing that we are increasing across the board in drugs and first-time offenses for drugs. And once we catch them, that number goes down for second offenses because it's working, our interventions are working, but students have a lot more access to that. It's a bigger community conversation to be had. A few more slides and then I'll finish up here if I'm allowed to have time. If not,
No.
okay. So our future focus, and one of the things that we want to do to shore up academic and attention to detail on our academic side, we want to make sure that we're getting those pre and post assessments through IXL and Edmentum. We need more mental health services. We've had to decrease some of those services because of funding and budget cuts. So that's been challenging and difficult. We also realize that we need to look at these students longitudinally post-transition, and so this is a great case study. And while we're looking at students right now, we want to make sure we track them years down the road to see did this intervention actually change the trajectory of their academic success in their future, or is this short term, but we need time to assess that as this has just been in place not very long. We also know that there's a lot of positive outcomes that come with extracurricular connections. I know Dr. Copeland's been really supportive of the rec centers and flag football and Lazy, and there's a lot of different opportunities in our community to have our kids connect and do something positive after school hours. And we also want to establish community heroes, people that can come in, work with our kids, mentor them. Things to consider, just for the board's consideration, like if our programs are decreased or diminished or aren't, because of budget cuts, a lot of these not a lot. I'll just say what the reality of the situation is. These programs are tied to our grants and their grant work. And so if these programs were to go away, some of those grants, $8.4 million grant or $900,000 grant or $400,000 grant, those grants and those fundings could potentially go away as well. I think it's also important to consider that these programs are working, and I don't say that lightly. I've spent hours, my team has worked tirelessly to make sure that we are providing accurate and up-to-date data that we feel confident presenting before your board and the community. And we know and we're confident these programs are working. We have anecdotal data as well. A few parents wrote you letters in your supplemental board package. I encourage you to read that. And this program makes a difference, not just for these kids, but we think division-wide as well. And if you go to the next slide, what we've seen is a decrease in some of our major categories across the board over the last 2 years. So blue represents our decrease in behavior in the categories of violent offenses, fights, assaults, threats, and classroom disruption last year. And while some of our gains are a little less this year, we're still decreasing those numbers. I think when you start losing weight, some of the weight really comes off at the beginning, and then those last few pounds are harder to get. But we're still seeing a positive trend for 2 years in a row in the right direction in some very challenging situations that are making an impact across the division. And again, this isn't something that is just, these aren't numbers for alternative programs. These are division-wide numbers that we feel are making a difference in improving the classroom environment for our teachers to be able to teach and have less distractions for our kids, which I know has been a top priority for our board, and we want to work alongside you and provide this service and intervention. Next slide. Just some positive affirmations that allow us to feel like we're going in the right direction and doing the right work. This model, we've been reached out to from folks across the state and North Carolina. We've had many positive news stories from WSLS, SET, NPR, PBS. We've presented in front of the Region 5 School Board. We've had positive feedback from parents. It's just been anecdotal. We don't think we've seen a positive impact on the classroom and have teachers. I was talking to one of our assistant principals today, and the teachers were just expressing, how impactful it is to be able to have some of these students put into a different environment and how much better that makes their job as far as being able to teach and have somebody else work on the behaviors because they want the kids back, but they can't just get to them with all the other students that they have. And I think that we're trailblazers, and one of the things that we talked about in the beginning, our vision is to be a worldwide model, recognized worldwide. And just a few weeks ago, we were reached out to by the members of the Department of Education for Tasmania, Australia, who's coming to the U.S. For 2 weeks to visit Harvard, and then they're going to D.C. for 2 weeks to learn more, and then they wanted to come to Lynchburg, Virginia, to learn about the Restore program, because they've said they've looked all over the country, and they haven't been able to find anything that's as systematic, intentional, and having the impacts that it's having as what we're doing right here in little old Lynchburg. So I'll leave you with this quote. This is what our kids need. They're facing so many challenges with social media, coming out of the pandemic. It's just a different climate in the world and political landscape. Blank said, students need this type of intervention to be successful, and if we lost this program, it would really set us back. We made a lot of positive strides. We're seeing suspension numbers go down. We're seeing students learn how to behave appropriately and be successful in the classroom. And that quote was a direct quote on WSET's website from me around this time last year. And so I beg you again, if we lost this program, it would really set us back. I think we're showing success in the positive direction. I know it is an investment. I know there are a lot of other priorities, but this isn't just about the kids in the alternative program, those 500 kids to date. It's about all of our kids, and it's about improving our situation for our teachers, and we're committed to doing this work. And if there's something that we need to pivot or do differently, we're committed to do that work too, but we believe in what we're doing. We have amazing people and staff that work tirelessly every day. I can't thank our teachers and our principals, our directors enough, and that work wouldn't be possible without them. But this program is changing lives and changing generations of lives. I'll allow for any questions if there are any at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Linda, any questions for Dr. Brown?
So I can understand, I'm trying to look at this structure. So we have a restorative academy that takes care of K and 1. And then we have a restorative academy for secondary 6 and 9.
Yes, sir.
Where is 2nd through 5th?
Is waiting on you all to approve funding for, and
Okay. Where is,
we've been able to do.
where
We do have the.
Where is the TAP program? Where is that located in?
Yes,
in
so
who-
we do have a more, our Tier 3 program is our TAP program. That's located inside of Bass Elementary School on the 3rd floor. And that program serves students grades K through 5. That's Ms. Cooley's program. But that is a more intense intervention for Tier 3 behaviors. Tier 2 behaviors, we were only able to have the funding able to address the cohorts that have the most issues. When we looked at our data, we realized those transition years, grades K and 1, and grades 6 and 9 were having the highest number of suspensions and referrals. And so it would be great to have a Tier 2 intervention for all of our grades, but realistically, we didn't have the funding for it. And again, I just would say, like, we haven't just asked the board or asked City Council fund this idea. We went out and fought and found grant funding and tried to ask for a very minimal amount of investment in our programs so we can get them off and running and prove its effectiveness. And I think now that we're proving its effectiveness, it's an opportunity to either expand or at least maintain.
What was the TAPS program's original name? The name was changed, right?
Success for All. Was started, I think, in 2015 or 2016.
So before TAB, it was successful all?
The transition program?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's bounced around from Hutcherson to Sheffield to its current location at Bass Elementary.
Other questions for Dr. Brown? Mrs. Love?
I want to start off saying thank you for all the hard work, and I know a lot of work goes into this. And it is a good program, and we need alternate education program, and that does help the kids at the base school as well as the teachers. And I looked through everything, and my only concern is that I suggest we stop focusing so much on improving, because a person can improve from 12 to 18 to 25, but it's not passing. And like you said, other places are looking at this program, and while it is great for behavior and getting kids back on the right track, and there's a lot of kids that jump around, but for the ones that really don't as much, it's a wonderful program. But still, the teachers are saying they're so much farther behind academically. And you talked about this $2 million grant. How much will it be used on academic strategies and academic plans? For example, it's great if a child is I mean, I know how I've had students that are low as well. So, but I find ways in my classroom to say, okay, we're going to work on this, we're going to try this strategy. The program is great, but if we can't get the academics up, then it's only great for behavior. And that's my concern. The clinicians and the specialists and all that is needed, but will this $2 million go to more of just personnel, or will it go to, like you said, the online is not very good, and kids that are low don't do well on online. They need more in-person help. But there are better online programs that break things down much easier if you have to be remote and someone cannot get to you. It's like, how much is being spent on the pure academics just so we can show that these kids are learning and they're not having learning loss, even though part of it's a part of their behavior, learning loss while they're in there, because that's the big issue. You're doing a great job and everything, but that academic piece is still huge for those kids, for those parents. You know, we have parents come up to the podium complaining their children are not passing, SOL scores are down. You say we're doing great, but the kids aren't, you know. So my focus, when I looked at all that, I just saw that a lot of improving. Like there was Fort Hill had 16 improved, 2 declined, 4 flat, 5 maxed out. So maxed out, that means they passed all the credits, correct? So that means only 5 out of 16, 17, 18, about 21 kids still failed. So you see, I mean, they improved, but they didn't pass, they didn't max out. So what strategies academically is what I am saying is for future and looking at this to make it such a successful program, other places will pull from it, not just because it's good behavior-wise, but because the kids do actually improve and they're not even further behind when they go back to their base school. And another concern is the transition. So the last week before a child transitions back, or a student, couldn't they go back like to their base school one day, then come back to where they were for 2 days, and then come back another day? So a slow transition in case during that week, if there's a setback, a child's just not dumped off because they finished the program, and then they're back in there another week or two because, you know, they weren't quite ready to come back. That's what I'm saying. Is there a transition piece that they can sort of ease into it instead of being dumped back?
Dr. Glover, would you please talk about the transition program for your students? And then Ms. Cooley, and if either one of you would like to speak to that. Thank you.
So for transitions, what we do at Fort Hill for students that are transitioning back is we communicate with the principals in an ideal world, at least 2 weeks before students are, so they have a review date. We know when they're going to be reviewed and determined eligible or not. Those who are eligible, we try to get those names to the base school principals about 2 weeks before they transition back. Those students are then brought through some transition activities with our staff, our restorative team at Fort Hill. They then connect with the base schools, and each of the base schools has a behavior person that they connect with those schools. Our restorative team takes those students to visit the base schools to do to get their schedules, but also to meet with their teachers that go around the school. Some of them have never set foot in the base school before. So they're going to get a tour of the building if they need that. They're also getting some resources from the behavior support person at those base schools. So the goal is they're kind of getting some activities to prepare at least 2 weeks in advance so they know that they're going back. They are supported by going to the base school to actually see what it's going to be like, meet the people, meet the support people that they're going to need. They actually have one of the requirements of the restorative specialist position is they actually create a transition document that is supposed to be a handoff from our school to the base school, and that details what the primary behaviors are that are of concern, and these are the functions of the behavior, and these are the interventions that have been successful or that we think you should try at the base school. And then our restorative team actually does a leadership retreat. So every kid that is going back to their base school, they get to go on a leadership retreat to, it's a celebration, but it's also kind of a team building activity. So we've used Camp Kumbaya. We've also used Thomas Ray Outpost in the past where they do ropes courses and different things. And then we end the day before they transition back with a big celebration that Amy and Dr. Woodok have been part of, excuse me, Ms. Pugh and Dr. Woodok have been part of, as well as some other members, where we actually have a red carpet that we roll out, and we have one of our staff members serves as a DJ, and we actually walk them down the carpet and scream our heads off to celebrate them.
Okay, so 2 questions for you.
Interrupt. I'd like to make the motion that we continue this discussion at our work session. We have lawyers on the clock upstairs.
Oh, okay.
And we need to move into that closed session. So I move that we continue the question and answer period on this at our work session on February 18th. Also that we delay our school board member reports to February 18th, and that we move the superintendent comments and board comments to after the closed session tonight.
And this is all is important.
This is
discussion.
great, and I don't want to diminish this, but we're
I get it.
Yeah.
Am I invited to come back to the work session?
Yes, you are.
Yes,
I
yes.
have some.
Because I'm not finished.
You have good
so-
questions, and I want to.
I have 2 more for you too, yeah.
Possible to get the RE principal here as well.
She back
I'm
there.
talking about the
Mr. Martin. Mr.
high
Martin.
school, secondary.
Yes, yes, sir. We can make sure
What's
that.
his name?
Mr. Martin.
Mr. Martin. Can we have Mr. Martin here?
He actually served the door.
There's a motion on the floor.
I second that motion. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Gilio?
Yes.
Dr. Day?
Yes?
Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
Mrs. Preston?
Yes.
Mr. DePaul?
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie?
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Now moving to the closed session, let me read the notice for closed session. Virginia Code Section 2.23711-A18, in consultation with the school board chair, recommends that the school board approve a motion to convene a closed meeting to discuss the following, as permitted by the Virginia Code 2.2-3711-A8, consultation with legal counsel concerning the specific legal matter of the investigation of the incident on the week of January 20th, 2025. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
Motion.
Second?
Mr. DePaul and Dr. Day. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Gilio?
Yes.
Dr. Day?
Yes?
Dr. Gupta?
Yes.
Mrs. Preston?
President.
Yes.
Mr. DePaul?
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie?
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley?
Yes.
Motion carries.
We are in closed session. before we, let me,
Hello.
I guess not.
Hey, it's up now.
Can you hear us, Mark? We
No.
cannot hear you.
All right.
Okay.
yeah,
Can you hear me now?
yeah.
Yeah.
Could you vote to come out of the closed session, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, okay. The board chair moves that the school board certifies in the closed meeting just concluded, nothing was discussed except for the matter or the matters. Number one, specifically identified in the motion to convene a closed meeting and lawfully permitted to be so discussed under the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act cited in that motion. Is there a motion to certify the closed session?
Motion.
Second.
Mr. DePaul, Mr. Connor, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Jalil,
Yes.
Dr. Day,
Yes?
Dr. Gupta,
Yes.
Mrs. Preston.
Yes.
Mr. DePaul.
Yes.
Mrs. Laurie.
Yes.
Dr. Tinsley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Now, what I'd like to do is give the floor to Dr. Day to go over some of the facts of the incident we discussed.
Okay. On January 21st, at the end of a discipline committee hearing in this room, Mr. DePaul removed the portrait of Dr. Edwards from the wall and covered the photograph with a picture of a movie character from the movie The Goonies, and replaced it on the wall. Mr. DePaul has been very forthcoming about the fact that he was the one who did this. He has not tried to conceal it and has been, as I say, completely forthcoming about that information. On Monday, January 27th, there was a training session for new employees in this room. I believe it took place at that end of the room, so most of the people were not aware. But the changed photograph was observed by a staff person at that point and was reported to Dr. Copeland, who came in and took the picture down and restored it to its normal state of affairs. Those are the essential facts of this. I don't think I need to add any more than that.
Now I'll give the floor to Mr. DePaul.
Thank you. What I thought was going to be a joke, it obviously turned out to be nothing close to that. I can give all the explanations of why I thought it would be funny, and I think maybe in a different situation it would have been, but it wasn't for this particular situation. We need to have a decorum of professionalism, and we need to lead by example. That was something that publicly I didn't do, and I brought dishonor to this board, people who I respect, and I owe you all an apology for that. But the biggest problem was the way that I misjudged a situation, and what I thought in one direction did not occur. And the biggest offense I have is against Dr. Copeland. I respect, appreciate, honor this man. We've had a cordial relationship, and I took it to an extreme, and my apology is given with no equivocations. It's sincere. I wonder how I can proceed as a board member with so many serious things happening at this point. Not only did I interrupt the procedures
from budget to discipline, which is very serious. My duties have been my credibility has been damaged, and I don't know if it can ever be repaired. But the biggest thing, again, is my sincere apology to Dr. Copeland, because I did insult and I did cause angst, and I'm sincerely, I'm very apologetic, very sorry. Wish it didn't happen. I wish I didn't do it, but it was me. It was only me. No one else helped. I did that, and that's pretty much what the situation is. My honor to this board and every member that has served and has served is that I will now meet with City Council, and if it is their desire to have me resign, I will resign. They will not need to go to any sort of extent. I know it's a very extensive process by which to remove a school board member. I will go and I will present to each member or to the group in totality that if they want me off, I will be tendering my resignation for this position.
Thank you for your apology, Mr. DePaul, but you know you chair the discipline committee meeting.
That's correct.
We have kids coming here week after week, putting post-its in restrooms in high school, and they're saying, I did it as a prank. But you and the other two members expelled them from the school district. They are suspended for 364 days. So the same standards should apply for us in terms of accountability.
Absolutely.
As board chair, I appoint committee members to different committees. So what I'm gonna do is with immediate effect, you're taken out from your membership to the discipline committee meeting. And I'm appointing Dr. Day to replace you on the discipline, and the discipline committee can decide who will chair that committee. Now, you also chair the finance committee meeting. I'm gonna take you out from the finance committee meeting. I'm replacing, it's a budget time. You have strength in finance and numbers, so I'm gonna replace you with myself. And the committee can decide who will chair, because you are the chair of both committees. But we have got to hold standards for what we are holding our kids to.
Absolutely.
And pranks and jokes apart, this should not have happened, and it cannot be tolerated in the school district. It cannot be. So that's all I have to say. But as of immediate effect, Madam Clerk, would you please notify the committee members that Mr. DePaul is off from discipline as well as from finance committee. Thank you. Dr. Day, this,
Now we return to our agenda.
which was the board comments, right?
Board comments.
Board member reports.
Board member
Board member
report.
reports, we deferred to the
18th.
work session.
Yeah. Mr. Connor, do you have a comment?
No, I don't.
Mr. Jalil?
Just thankful for LCS administration that were working diligently to resolve the problem at Sandusky middle the other day. I got to see a little bit of it, and it was good teamwork, excellent operation, and I'm thankful for our administration team.
Dr. Day?
I would just like to remind all the board members that a week from tonight, we have our joint meeting with City Council. There will not be a prepared presentation like there often has been in our joint meetings in the past. So I think each board member should be thinking about what they want to communicate at that meeting, so we don't go to the meeting and just sit and stare at each other with nobody having anything to say. So I think we each ought to think about what we want to say to City Council and what questions we want to ask, and be prepared to answer their questions.
Just thanks for all of you for all of your service to our students, not just to our city, but to our children. Our behavior is modeling behavior to them, and so I thank you for doing that in a consistent way, and I ask that you continue to do that as well.
Mr. DePaul?
I've said enough.
Mrs. Lowry?
I was out of the country, so I'm back. I was in South America. It went very well, the mission trip. I want to thank all the counselors for all that they do for our students in schools. And please, all stakeholders, please come to the, to have your voice heard at these meetings that we're having, because right now our numbers are sort of low and not many people are showing up. So we want to hear your voice for our superintendent search, but we can't hear it if you don't show up. So please look over the agendas of the rest of the times that are open for people to come and speak, and please come if you are able to. And I'm just thankful and happy to serve on a good board.
Dr. Tinsley?
I have no comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I give it to Superintendent for his comments, I apologize on behalf of the board for the actions of our fellow board member. Truly from heartfelt apologies from all the school board members. And we apologize to the people who work with you, who had to go through the last 1 week of, for lack of word, torture. But I can assure you, hopefully, we'll put people in the seats here who will not repeat the same actions. These actions will not be tolerated by this board or this community. We are here to set standards for our little ones, and they should be accepted throughout the school district. If any employee does that, they're done. If any board member does that, same principle applies. So I apologize to you, sir, on behalf of the school board, and I hope you all agree with me on that.
Yes.
Our sincere apologies to you, Dr. Copeland, and to the staff who has observed this in direct view. Now I yield the floor to you for Superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Gupta. Just a few brief superintendent comments. I hope that the community will come out for the basketball game tomorrow night at EC Glass and Heritage High School. It's always a great packed house for that game, and normally it goes down to the buzzer. For those of you that didn't know, I want to invite you all to the February 13th community dinner at Sandusky Middle School, so write down February 13th. That is the second of the nutrition department's community dinners where they're using those skills they learned from the brigade nutrition specialists, the chefs that came in and taught our folks how to do scratch cooking. I think it will be a great event, and we'll see lots of community members there. Dr. Wodika's not here, but he gave a great review of EC Glass's performance of Peter Pan and Wendy. It opened last weekend. It will continue into next weekend. If you find yourselves with nothing to do on a Friday and Saturday night, high school theater is a great place to go have an enjoyable evening out. And Ms. Hester mentioned that Heritage High School will open the Adams Family on the 21st of February. I think they did that back in 2013, 2014 timeframe, so it's a great show. I saw it back then. It should be a great show this year. Last week was School Counselor Week, this week's School Counselor Week.
Yeah.
We've doing some great things for our counselors. If you're in our buildings, please stop by the different counseling offices and give them a thanks for all the things they do for our students every day. They do make a difference, and that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. The informational items are Joint City Council School Board Budget Meeting, 4 p.m. on February 11th. Discipline Data Review Committee meeting, February 13th at 3:30. Finance and Facilities, February 18th at 3:30. LACR on February 18th at 3:30 in boardroom, and the finance is in room 206. Next school board work session is February 18th at 5 p.m. Academic Success Committee is February 25th at 3:30, and the next school board meeting is March 4th at 5 p.m. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.